USA to any country or company doing business with that nation. So why does the White House think it's a bad idea? Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you. I'm Neil Cavuto, and this is your world. Well, the Bush administration wants the UN Security Council to deal with Iran's nuclear threat. It fears this new bill may hurt efforts to reach a worldwide consensus on Iran. Will it? With us now, Republican Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, who introduced the bill. Also, Republican Ron Paul of Texas, one of just 3 members of the House International Committee, voting against it. Folks, good to have you. Congresswoman, to you first. Why do you think this is necessary?
Well, there are only certain toolboxes that are available to us. We can use military action, we can use diplomacy, and we can use sanctions against rogue regimes. And certainly Iran deserves to be in that category of rogue regime. It's a pariah state. President Bush had called it one of the axes of evil. And it's trying to do all it can to have nuclear weapons that produces a danger not only to the Iranian people, to the region, but also a national security threat to the United States. Now, we're not going to go to war with Iran, so that military option is probably off the table. Diplomacy, you have seen what has been taking place. We've been at this diplomatic maneuver for many, many months and many, many years, all to no avail. They've even built up their nuclear infrastructure. So that leaves us to the third tool in our toolbox, which is sanctions. And that's why My Iran Support Act has the bipartisan co-sponsorship of over 350 members of Congress.
But not this next guy, Congressman Paul.
Not Ron Paul.
You don't like it. Why not?
I don't like it because I think this is similar to a bill we passed in 1998 called the Iraq Liberation Act. At that time, I predicted it would lead to war. This is a tough statement, and even those who testified in our committee on this bill said that this really means regime change. It's tough. There are sanctions. Sanctions are, in a way, an aggressive action. It's an act of war. Sanctions did not work in Iraq. You know, we messed up Afghanistan. 80% of that country is controlled by drug dealers. We have a civil war going on in Iraq, and we're wondering how we get out. And now we're taking on Iran. This is going to cost a lot of money, and I don't see any benefits. I think the president does need some room for a little bit of negotiation. Hopefully he will work something out. But this bill emphasizes the use of force and authoritarianism, and force to me is sanctions. I do not believe that this is in our best interest one way.
Congresswoman, you know, there is this effort to try to deal through the UN. We've been criticized in the past for being a little cavalier. The president wants to try to make the UN stick. They've got France with us right now, that maybe if it does, it would do more than anything you can do with this bill. What do you say?
Well, I think that if we have to hope and pray that the UN will be effective in Iran, as effective as they've been with the oil for food scandal, as effective as they've been with dealing with so many of the international hotspots, I think we should all start praying now. I think that this bill is not going to be the legislative fix, but it certainly will go a long way to telling those countries that they've got to stop what they're doing. And what they're doing is that they're investing in the infrastructure of the nuclear power of Iran.
But why don't you give, Congresswoman, just give the UN a little bit more time? You're saying no, they're a joke. Is that it, pretty much?
Well, you know, we had in the audience today when we marked up the bill some of the hostages of the Iran crisis who were held in captivity, U.S. citizens, over 444 days by the Iranian regime. This is the same Iranian theocrats who have ruled that country for a long time, and we have been in negotiations with that regime for many years.
All right, so
decades.
Congressman Paul, what do you think of that? We've tried to deal with these guys. They're not very responsive. Well, they have a long history not being responsive, so this.
Well, I think that's all blown out of proportion. This is an elected leader. There has been no proof of any violations of any rules or regulations. There's no evidence that he's developing a nuclear bomb. This is a lot of scare tactics, the same kind of stuff that was thrown at Iraq, weapons of mass destruction, all of these things. This is the same type of thing that's going on once again. But I do not see one way that Iran is a threat to us. Instead of depending on the United Nations, which hopefully they could help us, but we should look after our national security.
Well, Congressman, would our national security be threatened if Iran had the bomb?
Could it be any worse than 30,000 nuclear missiles faced us down in the Cold War against the Soviets? Did we feel like we had to have regime change in the Cold War? Did we use containment and we can't contain Iran? I mean, it's absurd.
But if you had an Iran where they really, they're run by a nut, I mean, would that worry you?
Well, would he be more nuts than Stalin? No, I think that I think there could be. I mean, what do we do with Pakistan and India? We reward them for defying convention.
Okay.
We give them more money and more technology.
All right,
It makes no
Congressman.
sense now to take on Iran.
Thank you. I wish we had more time, Congresswoman. I want to thank you both.
All right. Thank you.